I'm Chris, and today I want to talk about not caring what people think. This is something that I really struggled with throughout quite a large part of my life, from childhood experiences which became ingrained into my mind. Fortunately, I've made huge steps in the right direction, and I'm almost at a point where I don't really care what anyone thinks of me anymore. And it is just a mile apart from how I used to be. I'm so grateful that I've got to this place. So, a few things that I realized and a few tips that helped me change myself from a person who was always feeling like they were being judged, worrying about everything and being a perfectionist and caring so much about potentially offending another person or saying something stupid or embarrassing myself, to a person who lives with relative social freedom now. Doesn't says I say what's on my mind. I sometimes make mistakes, as we all do. We're all human, but I don't beat myself up anymore. And I realize that these things that make us human, these vulnerabilities and this lack of perfection, is actually the thing that connects us with other people. We all have a shell which we show the outside world. And this is with anxiety, with people with OCD and anxiety, this tends to be a shell of perfection where they cannot let people see that they're flawed, and they may exaggerate and they may make things up. They may tell white lies so that people think that they're better than they are, or that they can do things, or that they won't be looked upon negatively. And I find this to be completely exhausting, and I wasn't being true to myself. So, what I've learned to do is self validate. I've learned that no, even if someone else rejects me, I will never reject myself. I say things like, "Well done, Chris, you did excellent. You did that task the best you could. Amazing that you went to that dance class, even though you were really scared, and you're improving yourself as a person." If you validate yourself, if you're telling yourself these things and how well you're doing, you don't need other people's adoration. You don't need other people's praise. And it really doesn't matter what they think. I think it was Winston Churchill. He said, "What anyone else thinks of me is none of my business." And this brings me on to the next point, that I realized that we all live in our own virtual reality, and we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So people don't see you for who you are. All they see is, I like to think of it as a cinema screen. So everyone's got their own cinema screen where they're the main character and they're running through this movie. And we are all just bit characters. We are the waiter, the person on the street. We're just playing a small part in that person's movie. So all they see is that tiny little bit of us. They don't see who we really are. So all of their opinions and all of their attitudes towards us are just based on that surface level. So we can't try and make people like us, and it doesn't matter if we're going to be perfect or not, because we're such a small part in people's lives that as soon as they move on past us, they just forget about us. Think about the last time that you spent days on end thinking about another person or what they did or how silly they were. But compare that to how long you've thought about what you did might have been silly or embarrassing. You see the difference? That the If you use that other perspective, people just move on with their lives and they think about themselves rather than thinking about you. And really, at the end of the day, you have no idea what people think of you, because what they're thinking about you is inside. So all you're doing is projecting what you believe people to think about you outwards, but you don't know what they think, because that's with inside their movie, not with inside your movie. One of the most beneficial things that I learned when first learning to calm myself down from anxiety and reprogram these negative stories and attitudes that I had within myself was learning a technique called the emotional freedom technique. And this is where you can visualize doing things. You can visualize going into a public place or dancing or singing or giving a speech, any of these things. And you can learn to desensitize your brain by a very simple but extremely effective technique. You just tap in certain places, which seems to de- destabilize the anxiety system and allow it to reboot and come on in a safer mode. And this allows you to experience things and keep calm and reprogram attitudes and beliefs. There is a link in the description to this on my website where I break it down simply and easily. It's a very easy technique to learn. So head on over to my website and learn it for yourself and see how beneficial it can be for you. And finally, what we need to do when we are dealing with caring what people think is just to put ourselves in the situation more often. It's what I find is it's quite narcissistic to be shy or to care what people think because everything is about me, 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 me. What will they think about me? But by getting out in the real world, by talking to people, by doing the things and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and allowing yourself to maybe look silly, it builds courage. And the definition of courage to me is vulnerability plus action. That equals courage, regardless of what the outcome is. If you can begin to live life as if you'd want to live it rather than worrying about what people think of you, your life will change rapidly and you'll soon realize that it doesn't even matter what people think of you because what will happen is that you will start to think about yourself in a more positive way and you'll be proud of yourself for taking action and people would admire you for being a person who is courageous enough to stand up and do things and be the center of attention because we all suffer with these issues. We all suffer with self consciousness unless we take the time to really become the type of person who has put the work in to overcome them.